Okay, welcome everybody. My name is Sally Anderson, and I'm just going to get the screen loaded up now that we're recording. And I am the Early Childhood Coordinator for Nature Niños, which is a program of the New Mexico Wildlife Federation. And the New Mexico Wildlife Federation is actually part of a larger National Wildlife Federation, think Ranger Rick here, and each state has their own chapter. And today I'm so delighted because my friend and colleague, Nikki Julian Wave, is here from the Arizona Wildlife Federation. So today's wonderful topic with the Nurturing with Nature's Parenting series is backyard adventures, designing on a dime. And let's see, how come my screen doesn't want to go to the next slide? There we go. So that's what we're going to be talking about, how we can just up the fun and the wonder and the adventure and the nature learning and all kinds of good stuff just in our very own backyards. And this series is a collaboration between Nature Niños. I just told you a little bit about Nature Niños of the New Mexico Wildlife Federation, as well as the City of Albuquerque Parks and Rec open spaces. So it's a collaborative effort and it's been really fun. I'm not going to get into this housekeeping. I think everybody is kind of has adjusted to the Zoom world. We will have time for questions at the end. So, you know, if you have questions as you go through, just go ahead and pop them in the chat box, and I will either speak up or I will say something as I manage that for Nikki, since she will be, I'm going to have about 10 or 15 minutes here, but then it's going to be all Nikki. So yeah, if you have any questions, just raise your hand or use the chat box. Today, as I mentioned, is the Backyard Adventures Designing on a Dime. For those of you who are new today, if you would like to go back and see the other modules, they are they're recorded now, not pre-recorded. They are recorded as we are recording today's module, and you could find them either on the Nature Niños website, or you can go to the Nature Niños Facebook page, which is probably where you found us, and click on videos and scroll down, and you could look at the Gardening for Goodness one, the Wonderful Play one. The next one coming up is going to be about hiking and exploring with littles. So this has been fun, and I'm glad we have who we have with us here today. All righty, so this is a little bit about me. I think you can all see, and I should be able to speak to me, the screen at the moment, but I'm the Early Childhood Education Coordinator part-time for Nature Niños New Mexico. We are doing all kinds of things for all kinds of children in the state. We're pretty excited. I'm a 30-year veteran. I've been around for a while. You know, there's my bling. Worked in all kinds of capacities in all kinds of ways, have always sort of figured out a way to bring nature in and kids out. But about a year ago, I stepped into this work full time because I, as a veteran educator, saw two really urgent needs. First of all, a need to sort of rewild childhood and also honor childhood, because, you know, the standardization movement, that push to get the academics in, I have noticed through all of my years of working, is just sort of getting sort of lower and lower and lower. You know, we're thinking about how we can prepare 2-year-olds for school at this point, and that didn't feel right to me. So I really wanted to be able to step into a role where I could be a guardian of childhood and really speak for what I view are the rights of children to have a childhood. You know, we only have one childhood. And then secondly, my huge passion is sort of nature and the natural world, and just really feeling a call, you know, sort of from Mother Earth herself to join the good, you know, the good fight to connect as many children as well as adults back to the natural world. And, you know, I think all of us know that in the current times that we're in, that this is happening a little bit more naturally and fluidly because people are getting outside, which is a really exciting thing. I wear a variety of hats. my primary hats right now are this part-time Nature Niños early childhood coordinator position, but I also run a program called Soul Forest School, which is based in the East Mountains of New Mexico, just outside of Albuquerque. And we are an all outdoor, all weather, all year round forest school inspired, well, forest school program there in the East Mountains. And I do a few other things as well on top of that. I'm a nature lover and a nature mama. I've got a 17-year-old now, so he's certainly not a little one anymore, but we still get him out. And as I mentioned, I'm a true gardening of childhood. I did not mention some work that I've done with Prescott College in two capacities, but one is they do a really wonderful summer-based institute for early childhood professionals, supporting them down the path of wanting to bring more nature in and children out. And that's where last year I met the wonderful Nikki, who is with us. We both worked at Prescott. So I'm really glad she's here today. And this is Nikki. So Nikki, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you. Oh, we need to unmute you. I can't hear you.
There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, I'm a nature playscape designer, educator, and coach. So I help people go from the idea to the implementation to feeling comfortable working in those spaces, and then what to do with the kids out there in those spaces. And I absolutely fell in love with that. I've been doing early childhood education and nature education for over 25 years in various states: Arizona, California, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, and Florida, and always open for a new adventure of seeing different ecosystems. It's really exciting to me, and what kind of grows there. So I'm also a certified playground safety inspector, and that really helped me to kind of understand what licensing would like and what's considered safe, and where we have some leeway. So that's very important. I'm also an avid gardener. I'm a Maricopa County Master Gardener. I'm also a certified desert landscaper and environmental educator, interpreter guide, and very happy to announce I'm a certified play worker as well. We don't have much of, like Sally was saying, there's not much of a play worker structure here in the United States, but luckily a person who was trained in the UK, that's an adventure, pop-up adventure playground. They have a class for taking play worker understandings. So, but I'm also a friend of creepy crawlies. I'm pretty comfortable outdoors, and I take probably way too many pictures. Boy, that's my quick me. I'm a mom as well. My kids are they're now 24, officially 24 and 25. And they are now telling me how to take care of the earth. So I must have done something right, because they took it up, and now they're telling me to step up my game. So that's totally pretty fun.
Awesome.
And as Sally mentioned, I'm also, my day job is with the Arizona Wildlife Federation. I'm their outreach director. Mainly what I do is advocacy at the national and state level for protecting, conserving the environment and wildlife. And I will definitely say that what we do in early childhood makes or breaks it. You know, while I'm talking to people about advocating for laws, they either have it already or they don't. And once they're an adult, it's very difficult to get them to love nature. If we can instill that when they're young, even if they maybe don't pay attention to it all that much in the middle, they definitely come back to it, and they have that really strong sense. And that's what helps make the laws happen, is adults who had that time in early childhood to fall in love with the outdoors. And that's,
I agree with you.
Yeah, then those laws protect our wild places.
Awesome.
So that's me in a walnut shell.
That's you in a walnut shell. So we've just got a few of us here. I really loved this picture because it's sort of from my era, the 70s. I just invite you for a minute to think about, particularly if you have a backyard play memory. And there's just a few of us. So if you actually just want to unmic and just tell us what it is that was the first thing that came to mind. You know, for me, I always had a swing set. This one is definitely dated because you really don't see metal swing sets anymore. But I also was really blessed to have a lot of trees and boulders and rocks and natural sort of wild space right in my backyard in New Jersey, of all places where I grew up. So I spent a lot of time collecting lightning bugs, making mud pies, you know, roughing it, building forts, and also equally so on the swing set, probably standing up, as is the case in this picture. Does anybody else have a quick little memory they'd like to think of about their backyard in particular?
Okay, I'll chime in.
Yes, Misty.
Well, I think we had this exact swing set. And yes, we were on it all the time. But I think our space, we were kind of close to a busy street. But back then you could go in the streets and you could go and ride your big wheels up and down the street. And I think our play space went well beyond our yard. We were in our neighbor's yard. We were across the street. We were everywhere. So it was just, it was really, we didn't feel captive in our yard. We didn't have to make something of our backyard because we could just explore and go wherever we wanted to. So
thank you for saying that. That's such an awesome leeway into why we're here today, because I love the term childhood habitat. All right. And what you just spoke to, Misty, is you're absolutely right. Back in the day, we had quite a habitat where we were, you know, allowed to roam. And, you know, it's not the scope of today's presentation to get into all of the multiple cultural reasons why that's changed, but it has, and it doesn't happen like that anymore. So in my opinion, particularly in the particular times that we're in, like this couldn't be more timely, this idea of rethinking our backyard and what we can bring to the backyard, because there's so much potential. And I am hoping that if not, you know, with COVID, if not, first of all, we already are seeing more and more people are getting outside. And I like to think that with families and children, when I see them out on the hiking trail in places where I live in a national forest, and I'm seeing more and more families out that I have not seen over the past 8 years, I like to think that that is definitely providing a remembering for those people, and that there's going to be more of that going on. But I also like to think that even thinking as small as just in our backyard, that maybe slowly we could start a revolution, you know, and that backyard can extend to the neighbor's backyard, to the block, to the, you know, and we can hopefully get to a point where, you know, those of us who remember being able to walk through a suburban neighborhood and hearing just children's play everywhere, that we'll get back to that sort of as status quo again. So that's, you know, one of my big motivators for this work. Does anybody have a childhood backyard play memory they want to share before we move on? Anyone else? All right, we're going to power ahead then. So the last module we did was called Wonderful Play, and we really took a bite off of, you know, what is play? What is the purpose of play? What are children learning when they're playing? And we sort of went through the developmental milestones of play. And obviously with Nature Niños, when we speak about play, we are really sort of firmly placing it in this idea of nature play. So nature play challenges and fascinates children and teaches them about the wonders and intricacies of the natural world while they explore and play within it. It is intuitive and unstructured, constructive or deconstructive, timeless. It encourages interaction with natural materials, features, indigenous vegetation, and creative landforms. Natural play is often a blend of materials and experiences to create purposely complex interplays of natural and environmental objects. It's also free. So I am very confident that as we listen to Nikki today, you're going to be able to see quite easily how designing your backyard to support the play of young children is going to bring that nature play in. And nature is everywhere. It's everywhere. This is just a call out. We're not going to watch this now, but we talked a little bit about this man called Peter Gray in the last wonderful module. And he's a real mentor and just sort of a hero of mine. He is what's called an evolutionary psychologist, and he's out of Harvard. And he has coined the term Mother Nature's pedagogy for learning. And he really talks about how humans are wired to learn in the ways that Nature Nino supports, you know, through Soul Forest School, the work I do, sort of the risky and adventurous play. He really provides the evidence, the sort of research and the look over time of why this type of play is so crucial to the healthy development of young children. So, you know, this will be made available later, but just take a little note if you are to check out Peter Gray. This particular TED Talk called The Decline of Play is a real motivator to be thinking as parents and as educators what we can do better. And, you know, it's pretty much free. It's pretty much outside, and it's pretty much easy. You know, if we provide the opportunities for children, they generally figure it out. So I encourage you to check him out. Oops. We're going to just sail through this super duper fast. I just would like for this module, before Nikki speaks to things, to kind of put us in that frame of mind of play, and to really emphasize that when children play, you know, there are several famous people, Marie Montessori, you know, Mr. Rogers, Albert Einstein. If you were to Google quotes of what these people have said about play, it will become really clear really fast. Like Albert Einstein talked about, you know, that there is no such thing as intelligence unless we sort of play first. So play really is the work of the child. And if you are not a trained early childhood person, just know that from very early on, there's functional play that's going on, which is sensory motor. It's that stage where everything goes in the mouth and babies are exploring things, but this serves an evolutionary purpose. As they get older, they start to do what's called symbolic or representational play, and you see them constructing things and being very dramatic. And then gameplay comes, you know, more at 5 or 6, and gameplay is, I'm sure if we all talked about our own childhoods, like I know for me, like anybody heard of kick the can before? Like that was a thing that we were playing in the backyard, you know, and even just ball play and what have you. We don't see quite as much of that anymore, but there's no reason why we can't bring it back. One thing I do want to talk a little bit more in depth about before we get to Nikki's piece, there is an organization called Tinkergarten, and they're a really wonderful organization. They offer local classes. They're worth checking out. The reason why I have them cited here is because they, in the context of the United States, are sort of the example that I know of that sort of look to Europe, to that play workers model that Nikki's been trained in, to this more general idea of something that's called behavioral schemas. So how we can actually be with children and observe them in their play, and as they're learning and growing, and as a parent or as an educator, observe that and or, you know, co-facilitate that, and know at the same time that there's so much amazing learning that's going on and preparedness for the academic years. So the concepts that they use, or the framework that Tinkergarten uses that I really love, is something called behavioral schemas. And behavioral schemas are patterns of repeatable behavior that occur across cultures and places. It doesn't matter where we are. So going back to Peter Gray, it's that idea of evolutionary play. Children, it doesn't matter if you look at a 3-year-old in the United States, in China, in Kenya, in Indonesia, you're going to see similar patterns across cultures and places. Experts believe that when children repeat these behaviors across situations, they grow intellectually, creatively, and even socially. Children gain knowledge and confidence through their play, which then prepares them for later learning. And this type of play, which is easily enjoyed through the use of loose parts, nature play, it's highly engaging to children. This is how children want to play. You know, it's sort of that idea of getting the new refrigerator, and maybe you've bought brand new toys for your children, but all they want to do is play in the box. And that refrigerator box can be one thing one day and something else the next day. It offers endless opportunities. That's what kids are wired for. They actually want that much more than the, you know, the blingy toys that are really pretty and that we have been led to believe culturally that they need to prepare them for the future. It's not true, people. It's not true. It's back to basics that serves the best purposes. So with this idea of behavioral schemas, just, oops, I don't know what just happened. Here we go. Let's go back. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 behavioral schemas. Again, that, you know, if we're thinking from age 2 to say age 8 is roughly what, really from birth to age 8 is what we call early childhood from a professional standpoint. But in terms of the development of play, it's really about age 2 that we start sort of watching and noticing to age 8. So these 7 things, I can tell you from a forest school perspective, we see happening all the time. So transporting, it's the idea of like this little girl in the picture, you know, using one of those good little vessels to fill with dirt, carry it somewhere, dump it somewhere, fill it back up again. Kids are motivated to do that, and they're actually learning a lot when they do that. Rotation, circulation, classic example, being on a swing and wanting to swing around in a circle, or watching a washer or dryer go round and round and round and round. Trajectory would be something like, you know, maybe there's a fallen log in a forested area and children kind of walking across that log, or lining things up in a certain way. That has some crossover to positioning. Enveloping and enclosing, total classic childhood behaviors, building a fort, whether that's inside or outside, and, you know, wanting to be kind of enclosed and inside of that fort. Connecting, a more modern version, but in some ways still sort of, you know, it feels kind of quaint, is like Legos, you know, putting things together or building with blocks. Transforming would be turning something into something else. Play-Doh, rolling it out, you have a pizza, or you have cookies, or you have sushi, or you have you know, who knows what. Same thing with mud. We can transform mud, if we've got a mud kitchen to play in, into a zillion different things. So this is worth checking out, and I'll make sure there's a really nice PDF, and it's down here at the bottom, the web thing, the web link here. There's a really nice PDF that's worth a read. That kind of breaks this behavior down and gives more examples and kind of can give you some ideas of how to support that when you're seeing that happening with your children. So that, this again is from that wonderful play. So in early childhood, a term that people are using and hearing more and more, and certainly embracing as guardians of childhood, is this idea of the refrigerator box that I just shared, or using really simple loose parts that are extremely open-ended and the imagination never ends. So I would encourage you as parents, if this is not an area you're familiar with, you know, go and have a look online about loose parts, and or go back to our module that's been recorded and is posted at this point on Wonderful Play, where we dig into this more and we provide some really cool ways that you can start to provide this kind of thing at home for close to no money, really. So it's really worth looking into, really easy to do. And my final piece, and then it's all Nikki, so hopefully I've done pretty well, Nikki, is I want to introduce you to a man called Rusty Keeler. He is an amazing, amazing professional. He, for the past 25 years, has been a huge advocate in the United States for risky, adventurous, messy play. His area of expertise, much like Nikki's, is around sort of designing naturescaping. It's kind of a cool new word. He has got a lot of books out that are really wonderful. His link is at the top of the page. One thing of huge interest that would be worth you checking out is he, in these COVID times, has started releasing, you could see the name up here, this is the first episode, it's called Rusty's Backyard. And he's got 2 young boys, and he basically is showing parents and professionals what he's got going in his tiny little backyard with his 2 boys. and how they get so much learning, adventuring, joy, fun, mischievousness, sensory play. I mean, you name it. It's dozens of things that are happening with just a really simple backyard that he's designed with them in mind and collaborated with them. So it's worth going and seeing his YouTube videos. They're a lot of fun. He's a really cool guy. I've met him before. And someone that you should just know about if this is a topic that is of interest to you. So that was a lot of talking. I'm going to pause and see if anybody wants to ask a question while Nikki gets her pictures up. It's your turn to share your screen, and then the rest of the time is going to be Nikki. And Misty, who's with us today, is a mama that I know and love, my friend. She sent in some pictures of her backyard that we will have time for Nikki to actually sort of talk through and give some ideas, so you can get an idea of how all of this stuff I babbled through and what she's now going to share with you can actually be applied. So does anybody have a quick question with what I went through, and then we'll turn it over to her? All right, Nikki, you go. Go, girl. It's all you. I will help you keep time. You've got about 35 minutes.
Okay, sounds great. Well, thanks for having me, Sally. That was a wonderful introduction to all that great background, because when we think about designing our backyards to be more playful, having that kind of background really helps us to think about the fact that play is messy, it is fun. And I loved the in the Wonderful Play session, I think it was you, Sally, but I don't know if you were quoting somebody else, but you said another word for play is freedom. And I really want to, back that up today, is that a lot of people think when they're doing things in their backyard that they've either got to call a professional, which you don't have to do. There's tons of stuff you can do on your own. But then also that once you create it, that it's done. Especially when it comes to gardening, they think, okay, I've planted this plant, it's going to stay there forever. No, your backyard is a palette. It's fun, and just like any painting, you can paint right over it and try again. And so I highly advise, when I'm talking about nature playscapes, it's not only that your children are going to be playing in those elements like the mud kitchen or with the plants or down the pathways, but you are also playing by designing this space and making it fun. So that's how adult gardeners play, for sure. So I wanted to share just a couple pictures. I have tons set aside. I don't think I'll have time for most of my pictures, but I wanted to show you what was really important in driving me. So here's a memory that I have. This is my son, who's now, he's going to be 26 this year. And so here he is, I don't know, 3-4 years old. This is when we were living in Washington State. We had this beautiful snowball viburnum in the back. And when it flowers in March, it creates flowers about this big that look like snowballs. And he's out there enjoying them. And one day he knocks on the door, the front door, which was kind of surprising. Like, okay, I knew they've been outside. Why is he knocking on the door? And I opened the door and he goes, "Mom, look!" And he and his sister had covered the back porch with the flowers from the snowball viburnum, at least 2 or 3 inches deep. They were having a ball. My reaction was to totally freak out. And so this is my payment back to my children, is to say, don't freak out. It was a lot of fun. Guess what? The plant totally recovered. The next year it created just as many snowballs, if not more. They could only reach maybe 3 feet up. But I had this idea that we couldn't harm plants, and I was really, and we couldn't be destructive, because I was a nature lover. You can't destroy nature. And what he lost, he never did this again. After that moment, he never really got back in touch with those plants, because he found out that it was a bad thing. And what I'm here to tell you today is it's not a bad thing. Destruction is part of the natural process. It's also a way that we learn, whether it's children, and I'd rather they learn destruction when they're young and can only reach 3 feet up in the air than destruction when they're adults and can topple over beautiful rocks at national parks. We've got to enjoy and learn about what destruction does when we're young. So in your backyards, which is this already kind of human-built environment, you have that chance to build and destroy over and over and over again. And so that's, if you get nothing out of this program, remember this cute smiley face, enjoying these snowball viburnums.
And
I wish we
Nikki,
could
can
do it
I
here
just
the
chime
Southwest.
in?
Mhm.
Can I just chime in and say I so love that you share that memory in particular, in particular because of the work we're doing, because I think people can get very stuck in this idea of like, leave no trace. And yes, of course we want to respect living things, absolutely. But as I was listening to you, a term came to mind that we talk about at Far School, which is called wild tending. And if you think about it, we really want to be, we want to support children to wild tend. And the way that they do that is by ripping the flowers apart sometimes. Now, is there a time and a place where we might want to step in and say, ooh, let's leave a few behind? Absolutely. But if you think about it from the perspective of early childhood and connecting young children to nature, that concept of leave no trace is very much like we might as well, in my mind, we might as well take them to a museum and say, here is a flower, here is a tree, here is a rock. These are beautiful things. You are a part of this world, but you must not touch. And that perpetuates and continues that idea that we are separate from nature. And we don't want that to happen. I mean, now is a time where we want the children to be pulling the flowers apart because we want them to have that connection. And we want them to know that they are part of, the natural world so that we can grow stewards. Because we're getting to the point that if we don't start producing some stewards, we really are, I don't want to sound like a negative Nancy, but we really are doomed. So I did not know that story was coming, and I will remember it forever. And I love that you shared it because it's so hugely important. Hugely important.
It is, and it drives pretty much everything I do. Is now I used to be very much a helicopter parent and a hummingbird parent, over my children, making sure that they were learning things, and play. We're going to dissect the word nature playscape, but the play part is really they'll learn through play. That's really can be very secondary. When they are playing and they're tearing apart things and they're planting seeds in the ground, they're doing all those parts of play in this wonderful, rich environment that really can't be replicated indoors. And so the play is the prime thing that we're doing. And I think in backyards, especially at these times, that's going to be more important than ever to give children that time to be outdoors playing in this wonderfully safe, it's a pretty safe environment. So like I said, we're going to dissect the word nature playscape and kind of get a look at what that means. So how are they different than playgrounds? Playgrounds are traditionally fairly sterile environments. You've got a play structure. Being in that playground safety inspector course, it's kind of reduced down to what they can and can't do. And thankfully, there's always playground designers who are trying to be one step ahead of the safety, so that because they know that kids love the risk. And so there's definitely this play. We got to keep things safe as well, but we don't want to sterilize stuff either. So nature playscapes kind of allow us a place for us to not be so sterile in what we create for playgrounds. It's also, nature playscape really inspires that idea of nature is going to be involved, right? So it's a human created space, but it's really nature centric. And maybe most of the time it's kind of human dominated, but again, that nature is the center of what is going on. And we want to connect kids to that. So, and of course, like I said, the play part, this is a place for fun. And it allows you to have fun too. Now the scape part is the design part. How do we take it from being, instead of a garden, which is like raised beds and planting seeds, and how do we make it more natural, more informal? And so the thing about it is that you get to decide how wild that space is, and then you also get to decide how human-centric that space is. And you're all on different levels of the spectrum. And as you can see from this backyard, this is all grass, and then there's little clumps of plants. So I was in that, at this time, I was definitely in a space of, okay, we got to keep it clean, we got to keep it organized, I was much more of a gardener at that time. Now I'm much more of a wilder, I would say. And so you might change your ideas, over time. And that's the nice thing about a backyard, is you can have that backyard for 3 years or 30 years, and you can do a tremendous amount of neat stuff with it for sure. So you get to decide all that because it's your space. Um, and hopefully it's a good time. It's also a safe space for you to try different things. It's, you know, if you're thinking about a child care center, you probably will put a lot more thinking into how it's done and the design, because you've got licensing kind of looking over your shoulder. In your backyard, you have quite a bit more leeway. You don't have to worry about licensing as much. Obviously, you want to still be safe. The other thing you're concerned with is that your kids are probably going to play in the backyard more without your supervision or direct supervision than they would in a child care center. So that brings up different concerns, is, you know, how do I keep my child safe, but also allow them to go out there and play on their own and learn some, you know, self-sufficiency skills. But what I'm going to focus on today is really kind of your backyard. I've got queued up in the chat, and at some point I'll bring it back up again, the resources that I'll bring up to you. One is that is my website, Nature Play Learning, and I've also got a Facebook page, and I really want to create that center of, or that space, the community for sharing our ideas. But like I said at the beginning, I'm also, that doesn't pay the bills. So I do have a day job. My day job is with the Arizona Wildlife Federation. We're the state affiliate for the National Wildlife Federation. And National has a couple different programs that I think are really, really cool and give you a lot of resources. One is the Certified Wildlife Habitat Program. And anything that you're creating in your garden, whether it's one garden bed or the entire yard being rewilded, is going to bring wildlife to your garden. And you can actually pat yourself on the back and get yourself certified by having just 5 fairly easy components. And in fact, the more you have of those components, the more rich with wildlife your space is going to be. So I definitely promote that, because obviously kids love playing with plants, but they're absolutely fascinated when you get something that's animated coming into that space, whether it's just simple like an ant or a bee, or the bird that comes after those guys, or the fox that comes after those guys. So the whole ecosystem you can kind of create, and that really gives you a lot of power. It also creates, it really gives the world a chance to be saved. If you think about a little teeny butterfly, monarch's just like 2 inches long. It has these little teeny wings. And it makes these miles and miles long migration. It can't do that unless it's got backyards every 30 feet to stop at. So hopefully that'll be kind of an inspiration for you guys to create these little spaces for not only for your little ones to play, but also the world's little ones, the insects, because they're the rest of us are really riding on their backs to live out the rest of our days. And the pollinators are absolutely the drivers of everything that we've got going on our planet. So I'm going to focus today on kind of 3 main, and I'm going to get to different plants as we go along. And I'll get to talking about what I'm doing, and I also have plants, and we'll kind of go back and forth, and I've got way too many things to say. And so I'm, let's see, what do I want to share with you? I want to think about kind of, I'm going to reduce it to 3 different main elements for your backyard. One is plants, the second one is places, and the third one is pathways. And if you can think about just those 3 and design your yard for just those 3, you will have an amazing, magical backyard. The first one is plants. So if you don't think of yourself as gardeners, I want you to start thinking of yourself as gardeners, because anyone can put a plant in the ground. Gardener, you might think, okay, I can't keep anything alive. Well, that's part of life. There are lots and lots of plants out there that we use on a daily basis and that we admire on a daily basis that last just 1 season. Plants die, and that's just how it is. And that gives you an opportunity to plant that again, or plant something else, or plant it in a different spot. So don't worry about plants not surviving. You're actually doing a better job for the planet by planting a plant than not planting at all because you're scared. So don't be scared, just do it. Plants need pretty simple things. They need some soil. And in fact, some people have learned how to grow them without soil. They need water, they need air, and they need a little tending. Your best tool as a gardener is actually your pair of shoes. Gets you out, and some of us don't even wear shoes when we go out to the garden, and that's good too. I have to, because I live in Phoenix and I don't want to step on any cactus spines. But that's really your best tool. When you put on your shoes and you go out that door, you are ready to tinker around in that garden. And usually, you know, if you've got little ones, they're following right along with you. And again, you're modeling this behavior of enjoying the outdoors, and they're going to enjoy it. They're going to find their own enjoyment with it too. So some things about planting to kind of remember is I encourage you to plant with wild abandon. More and more people I talk to about gardening, they're anxious about gardening and they're planting less and less, and I'm going, just plant more. I always have a space in my yard for planting something I've never tried before. I've grown wheat, I've grown sunflower forests, I grew a 30-foot wall of passion vines, and I just kind of have fun with it. And then when it's done, I take it out and I put something else in the place. Now, the only caveat to that is when you're planting trees are really difficult to move once you plant them. So think about where you want to plant your trees and kind of be intentional about that, but everything else, plant. And when we talk about the other part of this was kind of designing on a dime. So I was thinking about, how do you get the cheapest seeds ever, especially when you have little ones at home that may be 2 and 3. They might want to dig to China to plant that seed in. We don't expect great results out of youngster gardeners. That's fine. The fact that they learn how to put a seed in the ground and add some water to it and care, about what happens to it in the future, that's plenty. And then a couple years later, they'll get more and more refined at what they're doing. And so will you as a gardener. You'll learn as well. So there's a lot of places to find free seeds, and the first place I would check is your pantry. You might have some bird seed at home. Sunflowers are really easy to grow everywhere. They're a native plant for the Americas. They grow very easily in a lot of different circumstances. But also in your pantry, you're going to find things like a bag of beans or a bag of lentils. They will actually grow. You'll actually get beans off of them. And what a bag of beans, pound of beans is less than $1. And you can they're great for little ones because it's a pretty big seed that they can see, and they can be very intentional about where they put it in the ground. Another place that you can get seeds really, really cheaply or free actually is if you walk around and start collecting them. You probably have an oak tree somewhere in your city or maybe even in your backyard. Those are also great for children to plant because, again, they're pretty big. They can actually plant it fairly deep in the ground and it'll still grow, as opposed to really teeny seeds like carrot seeds and lettuce seeds are really, really tiny. And that's fun for kids. It's very fine motor, which is awesome. But they have a little bit of a harder time growing. So I do recommend getting the big ones. Pumpkin seeds, anything that's large is going to make a big flash when it grows. And it makes a big impression on little ones for sure. So seeds are cheap. You can also pull the apple seeds or orange seeds out of your fruit. And it's going to grow into a tree at some point. So after it starts growing, you probably want to get rid of it. The stuff that comes from your grocery store, whether it's organic or not, is also going to be grafted fruit to make different varieties. So it's what the seed is going to grow is actually going to create the rootstock of that tree. So you're going to get, when you plant an orange seed, you're actually going to get a bitter orange. Not all that yummy. Don't bother with the space in your backyard for it. Plant a real orange tree that smells just as good, has beautiful flowers, and you actually get something edible off of it. And an apple as well. If you plant that seed from your apple, whether it's an organic apple or whether it's a non-organic apple from the store, you're going to get the rootstock of that apple, and instead of that amazing red delicious that you got from the store. But it's still fun to give it a start for sure. Just keep in mind, okay, that's a tree. I want to take it out before it gets to where I can't take it out anymore. So plants really, also natively, like I said, if you're going around your park, if you take a natural trail, you've seen a plant that's at the point where it's at its seed head, it's kind of brown and crispy. This is great to do in wintertime, is collect those brown, crispy flower heads. And that's a wonderful activity for kids to do. It's a really crunchy texture, very sensory, and it's a lot of fun. And you just grab the seed head, stick it in a Ziploc bag, and when you get home, kind of scatter it around. That's what winter is all about, is breaking down those plants, releasing those seeds so that in the spring they're ready to go. So plants literally grow themselves. We actually kind of get in the way quite a bit. And the more we can allow them to just to grow and give them space, the better. But there's a couple things to keep in mind also when you're planting for young children, which is kids love to go around things. We talked about, Sally talked about wanting to, that circular motion and rotating. Kids will love to rotate around a pole, rotate around a ring of logs or or rocks, they will also rotate around your plants, which compresses the soil, makes it harder for your plant to grow. So I really recommend, just like this picture shows, plant stuff close together, especially if you have small children. And all the plant books will tell you, separate them out so they're, yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know if you just, we still just see the picture of your son. Is there another
really?
picture you have up? Yeah. I just see the picture of your son.
Okay,
I don't know
let
about
me stop
everybody
share
else.
and then let me start again. Thank you for that notice. All right.
And then just while I have you too, this we definitely need to be done by 12:15, and it's 11:47 now. And I do want to make sure, you know, we'll share some resources afterwards, but I definitely want to make sure we have some time for conversation to look at Misty's pictures.
Absolutely.
So we could talk through that. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there to you too. You are so well versed in all of this. I think you could probably talk easily for 3 hours.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So as we see in this picture, a lot of things are kind of crammed together. We've got a lot of different textures, a lot of different colors, a lot of different types of plants in one space. So I highly recommend this is again that plant with wild abandon idea. So again, I can go on about plants for a million years, and I'm not going to do that. So we're going to go on to the next one, which is places, and I'm going to share. I'm going to try to share another screen here. Actually, we're going to go back to the same one, and then. Now let me know if you can see this new picture here.
Right now, it's still the same one.
It's still the same one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So with places, as you're creating, as you're building your plants, you can see that. Fantastic. Okay. Now what I can't do is I can't reach my arrow key. There we go. As you plant.
Okay.
I know,
They're
I'm
changing.
going fast.
I don't know if you're doing that, but okay.
Yep. There's something I'm looking for specifically, hopefully.
Oh, cute.
And it's not in here. Sorry. Okay, my timing was all. I had it planned for about 45 minutes, so I'm smushing a lot of things together. So as you grow plants, you'll also want to create spaces where children can interact with those plants, and that's what I mean by places. So you'll hear a lot of different great things that you can do in your backyard, like mud kitchens or tree houses, little gathering spaces. Those are all really great spaces for your children to do activities, to play in, to be messy in. And we want those places amid those plants. And so one way to think about it is, you know, if you let your plants go with kind of wild abandon, and they get tall, it's amazing. You know, some plants overwinter fantastically, and the next year they grow even taller. And you might even be able to create little hidey holes and places to go amid those plants. So think of those places as kind of activity centers, and you can use logs to create a place to sit down. You can even just put down a blanket. It can be super, super easy, super cheap. But think about if it's a place that you also enjoy, that you can sit, and a place a child enjoys, there should be places just for the child too. They can be smaller, they can be kind of cozier and tighter, but you will want a space out there as well. And maybe that's a little bit further back. Maybe that's at the porch. You can still see the children 20 feet away doing, you know, having their fun in these places. The other part I'm going to share about is pathways. And again, you're getting like this, you know, 30,000 foot view really, but we often think of pathways as only a place that you can take to get to. And pathways are really a place for fun. And okay, again, I'm trying to like go back to, if I can go back to the different places. Let's see. All right, can you see three children on a path?
Take what you need to, yeah, just take the time you need to figure out the pictures that you want, because I think it definitely helps to see something.
All right, so pathways are places for play also. You know, on pathways we can run, we can chase, we can dance, we can put ourselves in a cardboard box and drive a fire truck. all kinds of stuff that can happen in the pathway. So don't just think of them as a place to go, and especially don't think of them as a place to go from as the crow flies from point A to point B. We want to make those paths kind of interesting and fun, full of texture. And I wish it wouldn't take so long for the pictures to like pretty up. But there we go. Here's a wonderful little path in the ground amid some tall plants. Now imagine if you're a toddler, that's a wonderful little cozy, grass forest to go through. Paths are really, really easy to make in your yard. You can you just put down rocks, flat rocks like this one did. You can make stepping stones, but also think about texture too. I worked at a garden that had a really awesome path that was made out of pebbles stuck on their sides. And the idea was you would go either without your shoes or with your shoes on, but step on those pebbles for 30 feet. And it really gave a lot of really interesting texture. So think about that when you're putting it in. I also wanted to, oh, it's not gonna work. I have my 6-year-old niece, when she came out to visit, we were at a really eclectic ranch, and the woman had a bunch of junk just kind of lying around. But my niece was able to figure out a way to go all around this ranch, just stepping on, of course, she didn't want to step on dirt. She wanted to step on the pathways, and she kept finding these really interesting pathways. First it was rock, and then it was the corrugated tin, and then it was the railroad ties, and then it was the rocks that she had out, just like crossing a stream, except it was all dirt in between. And I don't think she touched the ground for like 200-300 feet. I mean, she really found a lot of different places to go. And had a great time with paths. So paths can be, on the ground or in the ground, but they can also move upward as well. So when you've got a path that, let's see if I can get to some of those. Here's a great idea for a path too, is just a spiral, and it's just lined with rocks. So paths can also protect your garden as well. We saw with some of the pictures in the past there. These paths are protecting the plants that are there, but also giving a chance for people to walk around. And as those plants grow, it'll be even more delineated where the garden part is. Kids love playing with rocks. They love setting them out. So it's a great activity. You can even paint the rocks. Here's some stepping stones that I was talking about. You can even use wood logs, especially when you're going up or down. You might want to think about that as you create pathways too. Is how can you add some hills and some topography? Okay, so that was an absolute quick version of different things we might do in the backyard. And I'm going to get ready Misty's backyard. We're going to talk a little bit more about it. Sometimes it's easier to talk about it when it's, when we're thinking about applying some different stuff.
And may I say, I mean, we're good to go until, we can have a firm finish of 12:15.
Okay.
So that will give us 20 minutes. And I'm wondering if it would make sense to hear from Misty, A, to just sort of set us in this space, but B, to kind of maybe, best use of time, Nikki, to kind of get an idea from Misty about what she would want, what she and her partner Mo, what they would want to bring to their two boys, Weston and Bennett, in particular, and maybe we could think through that lens. Does that sound
Absolutely.
Okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's always my first question to people is you've got a backyard. What do you think are your attributes? What is your vision for what you'd like to do? Money were no object, time were no object.
And perhaps, Nikki, you could flip through Misty's pictures, and then we'll listen to Misty think about what she would like to do and share. I know that they've been in their space for less than a year, so there's a pretty open palette. So Misty, tell us what you dream about for Weston and Bennett in your backyard.
Okay. We are trying to actually reduce the, when we first moved in, it was all that gray crusher rock. So it was very it was just very hot and very, I was just burning hot lava, basically. So we're just trying to make it more, just a softer space, a more inviting space, a space where, we don't have any shade, so I'd love to have some shade. That's why we have a very young tree and try to cultivate. And then, you know, of course, the wall and everything, we're trying to find that up and everything. But more importantly, I just want like destinations for them. And I like the path idea of having that kind of be like a magical way of kind of getting their imagination going of where they're going, or the story they're telling in their head of where they're going on their destination, like that sandbox. I don't know if that picture has popped up yet, but the sandbox has always been a really good destination. And then you can't really see around the corner behind the sandbox, but there's also a space back behind there as well. It's not really, it's not really a sandbox, but it is a sandbox because there's sand in the pool. But anyway, I like the idea of having nooks of space that they can gravitate towards, kind of like maybe like the teepee that I saw you have, or or yurt, a fort. They are needing to use their big motor skills. So like a zip line, or that Sally had mentioned earlier. So I don't know if that if that's.
No, I think it gives Nikki lots of ideas of rabbit
yeah,
go down.
for sure. And you know what's great about your yard, Misty, is that it is an open palette. And you know, I often get people going, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I got nothing in my backyard." Fantastic. Then you've got tons and tons of possibilities for sure. It also sounds like you want adventure in your backyard, which is just wonderful. And because you're new to this backyard and your children are how young? I see two little heads bobbing in the background.
3 and 5.
3 and 5. So you've got a wonderful amount of time to grow with them as well. I mean, this is going to be their home, you know, for childhood. So they've got you've got all this space and all this time to do an amazing amount. And if this was just rock when you moved in and you've been there less than a year, you're already like well on your way to making it absolutely beautiful. And you know, all these plants are gonna, within a year or two, they're just gonna be huge, and they're gonna and your tree's gonna be casting shade. So it's marvelous, you know, what you're doing already. So some things to think about is, because you've got these two like long stretches, here's the grass, and I keep having to move my grouping of everybody to be able to find my arrow keys. You've got these wonderful destinations, like you said, we've got the trampoline, we've got the sandbox, we've got oh, that helps. We've got the fire pit and seat over here. So you've got this possibility for a lot of great nooks. And then you've got these grassy areas that you can add in more, you know, more space. So one of my first questions is always about the lawn. Now, you got rid of the rocks, and because yeah, they're just hot lava. What city are you in, Albuquerque, or?
We're in northeast, in the heights, like kind of towards the mountains.
Okay.
So yes, Albuquerque.
So you've got some cool in there as well. And lawns, we always have to think about. Oh, okay. With lawns, there's a couple different ways to use them. One is that you've got this amazing amount of space that the kids can run, especially if you've got runners, or if you've got kids that love playing ball games. Grass is awesome for that. The other way to think about it is grass takes up an amazing amount of space and doesn't go upward. So, and as your children grow, you might find out that, you know, the dog doesn't run around the yard as much more. The kids don't run and play soccer as much anymore. You know, when they get to maybe even 10 or 12, that might not be, you know, a purpose for them anymore. Or if you're living at a house now that you're like, well, you know, my kids don't really do that kind of thing. You can transform that lawn into all kinds of bushy plants and gardens. Now, when I say gardens, a lot of people think of like edible gardens and raised beds. What I'm talking about is intentional planting. And you can make your, you know, anybody can make their yard into a place of native plants, or it could be an entirely edible landscape. You can do all kinds of stuff with plants. You can have color schemes, or like I said, just kind of wild abandon. One year it could be just a sea of wheat. You know? But think about in the space that you have, especially in these grassy areas, how can you move them through that grassy area instead of going just from point A to point B? How can you encourage them to run around in that space? You know, if they're not necessarily like ball playing kids, like some kids absolutely love it. You set up a soccer goal and you set up the ball and they're doing that stuff all the time. And other kids just aren't into that. And if they're not into it, I would consider, first of all, thinking about, can you make a path through there that winds through and maybe loops back around? They might be ones that really, if they enjoy being on their bikes, especially like mountain bikes, and that's something that they're practicing, you can even throw in mounds of dirt into your yard to create some up and down kind of texture. And when we make paths, make them curvy. So there's always some sort of adventure kind of around the corner, even if there's not plants there yet. You know, there will be, as this tree grows, it's going to start dropping leaves. It's going to start making shade. It's going to have some boughs that are overhanging. And so as the path kind of winds through or even winds back, you know, making a loop out of it, is then they can keep on that path over and over and over again, instead of it just being a round circle or an oval, or just a path that goes kind of straight from point A to point B. Think about adding some curves and fun in there. It also looks like your grass is doing really, really well. So I'm guessing that's a sprinkler in the background, or you have irrigation.
No irrigation. It's just
no irrigation. Okay. And that's just fine. Plants can do with a variety of different types of irrigation or no irrigation. In fact, the more that you plant native plants, the less they actually need irrigation. And if you have problem spots in your yard that maybe either the sprinkler isn't getting to, or the dog keeps peeing in and the grass just doesn't want to grow, or maybe it's too shaded in that spot or whatever, you know, that might be your first spot that you're going, well, maybe this lawn, they're not totally utilizing this whole part, or maybe they're using just this part to play kind of running and chasing games, but these other parts are kind of vacant. That's where you can start putting in plants. And just a hose and a sprinkler is plenty. In fact, if you've got, you know, a lot of heat going on in the summertime, playing with the hose is a fantastic way to water the plants at the same time. With 3-year-olds, they don't know that the little nozzle on the end of the hose actually changes. You know, you've got a 5-year-old too, you probably trained the younger one to know, hey, you turn it this way and you've got a jet and you can scare off mom. But when they're really, really young, you can keep it on mist, and they don't know that it doesn't change, that they can change it to other spots. And with a child with a misting hose, they can be out there for an hour watering plants, playing in the water, and they're not using a tremendous amount of water. So it's great fun there. And then to the places, you've got this really neat spot back behind this fire pit. It looks like it's just trees back there, but there's also like the rock mulch that was covering the trees. It looks like you've already had success taking out that rock. There's a lot of plants you can use, as you know, you don't have to have the rock. So part of this kind of experience of how do I design something is how much work you want to put in. And the nice part about, you know, having a new house is you can decide that too. It's like, okay, I only have enough time for this, or I'm going to school this year and I'm working and I've got the kids. I don't have time for anything this year. But maybe next year circumstances will be a little bit different. Or if you have a weekend of like, you know, taking the rock out of the yard you probably already found. It's a big thing to do, but it really doesn't take that much time to make an impact for space. I mean, you know, within a couple hours, I don't know how far back that extends, but let's say it just goes back one more tree, or that's the end of it right there. You know, in just a short couple hours, you can have all that rock pulled away. And that can be the basis of, if you wanted to create a mound in the backyard, you can plop the rock on it and then plop dirt over the top of it and start creating kind of
that's
a
a good
mound
idea.
to use that rock for some other way. So you don't need to like, you know, throw it out on the sidewalk. You can do other uses for it.
And Misty Weston could help with that too. That would be a really good motor thing.
Oh yeah. Well,
absolutely. There's
the big square,
involving the
big
kids.
square of grass. We all did that together with the shovel and the wheelbarrow. Got all those rocks out. So I like the idea of, it's the same back there where behind the fire pit. It's all that gray rock. So
great.
But
And you've
like
already
the
done
idea.
this. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh no, good.
That was it. Okay. And you know, that might be, I know in one of my yards, I did the front yard one year and then I did the backyard another year. So, you know, you're going to be there for a while. So you have that opportunity to like figure out where the kids are playing. And, you know, just as soon as you know where they're playing, they've grown up another year and they've come up with another way to play and they may not do that anymore. But yeah, you can always, you know, remove that kind of stuff and put, that's a great spot for doing a lot of other plantings, but you can put pathways through that, even that little space under the trees as well. And again, kind of winding through the trees. You don't have to have a pathway where you have 50 feet wide or 20 feet wide. You can have a pathway through, you know, 5 or 6 feet wide. And that pathway just being really narrow. In fact, kids really love it. The smaller things are, you know, the kids are kind of encouraged to take those pathways. So those pathways can be just 6 inches, 8 inches, 12 inches. And then it's more for them than it is for the adults. And that gives them that sense of autonomy to be in those kind of places. And then as your plants grow up in that area, and again, you can change them all the time. Maybe that's, you know, some, hopefully you know, as those trees kind of leaf out, you know, it's going to create quite a bit of shade. So finding plants that do really well back there, but also get pretty tall. And, you know, your local nurseries are going to have some ideas for you as well, but there's lots of great, there's the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center in Texas has a great list of different plants. So does NWF's Echo site, which is the Early Childhood Health Outdoors. They also have a great list of different plants. Robin Moore is a wonderful designer out of North Carolina, and he also has a great book called Plants for Play. The hard part about the book is it's designed for Appalachia and East. And so it's my goal in life to create plants for play for the Western United States, you know, of our more dry conditions, and some of our native plants that are really great for play. But how he sets up the book is really, really helpful to think about, you know, plants that maybe that have more value than just edibles or that just look good. You know, we want to think about it for play also. Can they rip apart the flowers? You know, is it gonna be prolific with flowers so that you're not even caring? Like me with that snowball viburnum, that plant created tons of flowers. I did not need to worry about the kids ripping apart flowers. You know, it's not a great time to put in your very highly specialized dahlias and irises, because you're going to be very worried about, you know, the kids coming to pick those. And of course, they're amazingly complex, beautiful flowers. So of course, why wouldn't a child want to open it up and see how it works? So this is a time to put in, you know, plants that are really durable. So that book helps quite a bit with that, I think, because it just kind of frames, okay, how do I think about plants for kids, you know?
Nikki,
and you want plants that obviously don't have thorns and things like that. Yes,
could you be sure to email me the I could probably find the NWF one, but those resources you just mentioned, because I'll make sure to put them up on the website.
Yeah. Now here's
I know for
a
me,
list of some of the different ones.
not being like a plant botanist person, like looking through a list would be really helpful of what to plant. And I love I love the idea of like thinking about your, you know, your exotic rose bush or whatever, like maybe a little bit later on when, you know, they're older, and planting for something now, and that takeaway of like your, you know, your yard doesn't have to be your yard what it is now 5 years from now. Exactly. I just want to check in with the ladies that are listening. I mean, there's no reason why we couldn't. I think just because of Zoom fatigue, we definitely wouldn't want to go beyond 12:30 for all of us. But if you're still finding this interesting and Nikki still got it in her to talk, to keep looking at Misty's yard and sort of thinking through that lens, just by thumbs up, are you good to go until 12:30? Yeah? Okay. So you got a little more time, Nikki, but that's about 20 minutes. And I think it's really useful because Misty's backyard, as we've pointed out, it's kind of a blank palette, and it is, you know, New Mexico. Nature Niños is New Mexico specific, and you are the desert gal. So keep on keeping on, giving us some ideas of what can be done. Misty, do you have any like specific sort of wonderings or questions to ask Nikki?
I'll go back to your yard again.
Yeah, I am curious what I can do with the hardscape areas, because they are over there constantly. Over there by that pool that has the sand filled in pool. They're over there all the time. They're riding their bikes around it or playing in the sandbox or whatever. But for me, it's not something they can do all day because it's just like 400 degrees on that. So, but that is the area that they are 80% of the time.
Cool.
And I'm going to put a pitch in for shade sales. If you go to Sam's or Costco, you can often buy these really cool shade sales that are like triangular shaped. And I'm wondering if, as part of your concern, if there was some shade sales, at least over part of that, so that they could be in, playing in the sand with a little bit of shade. And you wouldn't worry so much, and it would soften it. It would soften it for sure. So you maybe check out and see if you could find that. That's not specific to kind of what Nikki probably has to say, but I wanted to just throw that out as a little thing to try.
And the nice thing about the shade sails also is that they've only got a few year lifespan to them. So what I would suggest is doing kind of a two-pronged approach, getting something for now, and then also getting a tree. So you've got some of that. If you've got this much space in the corner of your of the space of that rocky area, you can start putting in a tree in there and help to shade that space. Now, of course, what's going to happen with that tree is it's going to be a little messy, even if it's an evergreen. Well, you want something that has some sort of a canopy to it, so it's most likely it's going to lose its leaves at some point, whether it's spring or fall. And that it does get into the sandbox. So that's something to think about, like, okay, I don't want, leaves and stuff falling in the sandbox. The other way to look at it as sandboxes do get messy over time, no matter what. And I think the little nature particles kind of help with that fun anyway. And at some point, they'll be done with the sandbox. I mean, or your children, even if you have several more, eventually will grow up out of that sandbox. And that could be a place where you can, as that compost gets into that sandbox, of oak leaves or aspen leaves or elm leaves falling into that sandbox, it'll become a spot that starts to go from the beach to this wonderful planting material. So, we're talking 20, 30 years of time for that. But yeah,
Nikki, I wanted to just point out that Lindy, who's listening, she just typed into the chat. Don't know how viable it is, but my grandmother always painted anything outdoors that she couldn't move with white latex paint, so it wasn't as hot. So maybe paint or padding, or I'm even thinking of natural materials, straw, stuff like that, of some kind on the cement would help. So do you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. There's a couple things on that. Suggestion is I don't know if the white really helps reduce the heat. There's a lot of different theories about why the white, and that's a really common here in Phoenix, is painting the trunks white. They also get white from the calcium in the water. So a lot of trees just have natural white on them because the water sprinkling on the tree, and then it leaves a little bit of calcium on them. But there are some other ways, as you're waiting for this tree to grow up, or if you decide not to put a tree in there, or this great place to put a pole to help with that shade sails. You're going to need some anchors for that shade sail. So that's a great place for it as well, especially if it can be kind of decorative. I'm guessing that one of the things that your kids are doing on this sidewalk is it looks like they've got their scooters and their riding toys. And I bet they're here because it's a great spot for them to, again, go around and around and around with those riding toys. And that's, wears them out. It's fantastic activity. So a couple things that you can do on that. If you, straw is very easy to clean up and get rid of. So, during the summer, if it's too hot for them and you're noticing them not riding their riding toys a lot in the summer, you could put down straw to help kind of keep that from being too hot. But the other thing you can do is there's still corners of that rectangular space that you can add some things for them to kind of bounce off of, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It sounds like you have active kids. So straw bales in the corner, that might be a place for them to like climb and jump. It's good for seating. As the straw bale kind of wears down, it might be a spot for them to, test off jumping off with the scooter or a skate. And this is what I love about straw bales, is that once you get one, it's going to be used for like everything under the sun. It's a chair. You can even grow cucumbers in it later on. They can build them. You get 10 that you can build an igloo out of them. There's just tons of things you can do with the straw bale, and they're lots of fun. They're easy to maneuver. And it's great
as
big
the surface
body work for
on
the
the
kids
surface
too.
in my experience too, on the surface it immediately softens this place, a space.
It absolutely does.
Immediately
Yeah,
gives it
it
sort
won't
of a
be as,
naturey, yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And it won't be as easy for the riding toys to go over, but you said you have a 3-year-old, in 2 years they're going to be powering enough, to go over. And in fact, within a couple years more, that 5-year-old is going to get really bored with going around that circle, because they're going to want bigger stuff to do. And but if after this time they're really enjoying like using those straw bales or logs to kind of jump off of and use adventure on, those things can then be moved to that grassy area and create an obstacle course kind of created in there. And that this place can become more like, one of the things you can do is eventually you can remove that hardscape. If you do, hold on to those chunks. I'm a fan of like reusing everything. So, if you decide at some point to get rid of the hardscape, maybe because they're, in a few years, they're not using it anymore. Keep those chunks and use them as retaining walls, and you can build little retaining walls for gardens with those chunks of cement. And in the corners, you can also put in pots. And again, pots are great for hose watering and pretty easy to do. But at this point, your kids are at an age where they're absolutely enjoying that hardscape, and that's totally great. Roll with that for a while, and you can think about, well, what do I do on this hardscape later on, as their needs and wants kind of change. It's also a great place for putting.
Where did you say you would put the tree?
Go ahead.
Where did you say you would put the tree?
In this picture on the left-hand corner, I can see that rock.
Okay.
Where
Near
it
the
steps
green
up
watering can.
Yeah, and the green watering can, exactly.
Okay.
As you remove those rocks, you could put a tree in there for sure. And then what it's going to do is it's going to overhang. So it's going to overhang the. We have another view of this from this direction. Now that green watering can, I'm guessing, is kind of off to the left of that wooden fence.
Yeah.
Okay. So the tree that you put in will cover that whole back area. Another thing that's great to do with hardscapes is that's a wonderful place to put in little pergolas. And that's another way to get shade, is that, and you can find those really easy at Home Depot and Lowe's and things like that. And you kind of set it up in a day. And if you really want to anchor it, you can get concrete anchors to put into that concrete to hold those up. I
didn't hear
you
you
put whatever over the. Oh, sure. It's kind of a pergola or a ramada, kind of a picnic area.
Okay.
In fact, you can even get a tent to do the same thing. So, and that's kind of nice because, if you get a tent to do that, then you can test it out and go, hey, it's $100. By next year, it's gonna, the elements will have torn it to shreds, but I'll see if it's helpful. We'll see how the shade, works. Simple 10 by 10. But then eventually you can buy something like that's made out of wood, and it's really beautiful. And over the top of that, they usually have some sort of roof over the top of it. It's usually just like slats, but you could put more of a sailcloth over it to give even more shade. You can even cover it with boughs.
Okay.
If you had access to palm leaves, you can put that on top. And the poles make really great places to string artwork. Lights, you can really make those little, like that can be a playhouse at the same time.
Yeah, I like that.
An idea that popped up in my mind looking at that back corner too, Misty, where it looks like it is a little bit more shady, is when we sort of did some naturescaping at the preschool that I was at, we had a lot of wall and fencing, and we just brought in huge, long logs, not super heavy. So, you know, sort of like this kind of a circumference.
Mhm.
And we sort of, we propped them up against the wall, and we sort of wired them together and mounted them a little bit in the ground so that they were safe. And it created sort of like a fort feel, or like what Nikki's saying, the kids would, it created a really narrow passageway, because we had several of these, like
Yeah.
about a dozen of these, and they could kind of like sneak along the wall and sort of be
Underneath it,
behind
yeah.
these, you know, you get, it sounds like you get what I'm saying. That would be kind of something really super easy. And, you know, you're coming to the forest so much, we could quietly, we could quietly harvest some long, it could even be long sticks, actually,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and
Yeah.
usually a tree cutting permit also is pretty cheap. So you can harvest without them worrying about what you're going to do with it.
Okay.
Another option,
Okay.
that same kind of thing for that too, is at Lowe's and Home Depot, they have that fencing that's like bamboo fencing, and it's kind of a screen fence. It's super lightweight. And if you just set it out, you know, this is loose parts like Sally was talking about. But your kids can actually roll it out and go, you know, they will probably come up with unrolling it and making a lean-to against the fence with it. You probably, all you have to do is set it out there, and they will come up with the rest of the idea.
Right.
I love that.
And I'm always trying to like figure that out. When I think about loose parts, I'm always thinking about, do I have to model how to work this, or can I just throw it out there and kind of see what they'll do with it?
Love it.
And if they
Yeah.
don't get it after a few days, or they're not finding some other cool thing to do with it, then you might, you know, drop a little hint. But I'm very much of the sense of, and I think of letting the kids figure it out for themselves. We put too much, and I think this came from your last program as well, put too much adultness into, you know, kids play. And often we can just put it out there. And they can make a fort out of that stuff. It's super, super cheap. You know, if they ruin it, then they've had fun doing it, you know. And then
Right.
you don't have to worry necessarily about rooting those in the ground like the logs. Of course, the logs are going to make it a little bit more of a nature feel. Of course, it'd be a little more organic,
Yeah.
and natural looking for sure.
And I have
but
one
yeah,
other
you've
idea.
got-
I have one other thought I've been just sitting on and trying to, with my own, I am by no means any kind of expert. Nikki is the expert. And this is not really nature specific, but you could do so much with really cheap, easy, old car tires. And just knowing your boys again, like that end of the big sand area, I could see like, you know, a really big tire and maybe like 2 or
Yeah.
3 other ones. And it could serve as not only sort of an obstacle course and like something for them to jump off and play with, but it would, you know, it would create mini little sand areas that, you know, provocation could be provided again, like Nikki was just saying, where, you know, inside of one of those is a little construction area. Inside of another one is, you know, maybe sticks and stones and pine cones and, you know, just natural loose parts. I don't know, just something that popped up in terms of visioning. So Miss Nikki,
Yeah.
we have 5 minutes left. I'm
Okay.
gonna let you figure out how you wanna wrap up, and we will definitely post some of these resources. I see you put it in the chat. I don't know if everybody got a note of that. I should probably take a note myself so that I can get it up on the website. But yeah, think about how, maybe let's see if Misty has any last sort of burning questions, and then let's see how you would like to, what you would like to leave us with today. Or do other mothers, other parents
coming in a
also
minute.
have a
Okay.
question too before we wrap up? Because I know Shannon's been sitting strong. Let's just hear from the parents real quick before
Yeah.
Nikki wraps up for us, if you have any questions for her.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions. I just have lots of notes and ideas. So I'm excited to put some of these into practice. Thank you.
Great. Well, and on my Facebook, the Nature Play Learning Facebook, you're always welcome to post some pictures of your yard and say, hey, this is what I'm thinking about. What, you know, let's get some ideas going. And I'd love to generate some more excitement on that site. I haven't done much with it, so that would kind of get us going a little bit more.
And also, if
Oh,
your
what?
budget allows, I do want to put a little plug in for Nikki. It's not about that, but if your budget allows, you could also talk to her and she could help you even come up with a, you know, a mini plan. She knows that obviously Phoenix is a little bit different than New Mexico, but it's a heck of a lot more the same than what she was saying earlier. The ECHO program and some of the other NWF programs are sort of based more on the East Coast, you know, and what's growing there and what's thriving there. And it's a very different environment. So, you know, if you're in a situation where you're able to work with someone, I highly recommend her because she can help you really sort of vision and come up with a pretty solid, you know, 2, 3, 4 year plan of what you might want to add to it. So.
And
All
even
right.
though you know, a lot of the resources we have out there are East Coast kind of centric, you know, the design principles are still the same no matter where you are. And there's a couple different, you know, design ideas to follow. Obviously, Rusty Keeler has a very adventurous kind of design. The Natural Learning Initiative, which is Robin Moore, he has a design system that I've been following for quite a while. And Nature Explorer has also a wonderful design system, and there's a lot of overlap between them, so you can get a lot out of any one of those kind of design styles. What will look a little different is the plant palette, and I highly recommend native plants because then you've got wildlife coming in and enjoying that. They react to the seasons. It kind of mimics what you're seeing out in the wild as well. Instead of exotics, you're not bringing in plants that might be invasive to that space. And a lot of nurseries won't help you with that. And that's kind of the sad part. I'm a real advocate for nurseries selling stuff that are non-invasive. But you know, we'll handle that, I guess, in another spot. But a great way to figure out if you want those plants in your yard is to take walks in the wild. You know, make sure that you keep going out there and reminding yourself of what nature actually is, you know, instead of just hanging out in your backyard. Be inspired by nature. You know, that's going to show you the way. What are plants that your kids are loving at different seasons? You know, what are they going to look like between summer and winter? You know, sunflowers and aster flowers are just amazing. The different textures that they bring in, different types of grasses. You know, if we can be inspired by that and take a picture of it, try to figure out, okay, what it is. I'm an absolute plant nerd, so a lot of the plants you send me, I can probably look up as well. And like I said, we can compare it with like Lady Bird Johnson, and I Wildfire Flower Center, I almost call it Wildfire Center. I'm in wildlife and I get that word mixed up with everything else constantly. But I love figuring out what plants are. So if you take a picture of a plant and send it to me, that's like my riddle for the day, like doing a crossword puzzle.
And I wanted to add one more thing that I know, Nikki, you and I totally believe in, but I'm recognizing that we weren't explicit in stating it today. You know, as you're designing your space, talk to your kids. Like look at some visions online. You know, you could just do a Bing search for nature playscaping, and it's going to bring up all of these kinds of pictures that Nikki shared with us today. And you can actually say to them, hey, like if we could do anything in the backyard, what would you want? And that's really hugely important because, you know, they might say something like water. They want to play with water. We haven't talked about water today, you know, and water is a thing when we're in the Southwest where we live. But there are ways that you can incorporate in really simple water play things that could kind of, like Nikki was saying with the sprinkler, could kill two birds with one stone. You can get some watering going on and the kids could be playing at the same time. So I just wanted to put that little piece in because we didn't really mention that. And it's, you know, it's really important to get their input. And then that's going to help them want to like remove the rocks in the corner, Misty, you know, which is going to take a few hours. And sometimes kids after 10 minutes, they're like, I'm done. But, you know, if we've got a family vision, oh, remember, we want to do such and such, you know, I need your help. Then it could be this whole adventure in and of itself that is even more, you know, more meaningful because they've helped build what it is that they said that they wanted to start with. So, Nikki, 2 more minutes and then we really do have to say bye. Okay. And thank you. I do want to say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. You know, please check out, make sure you make sure you send me that Facebook page like today, and I'll make sure it's up on the Nature Niños site. And we could post some of Misty's pictures and some other pictures and see if we can get some conversation going. That would be really, really great. But, you know, check her out, ladies. She's amazing. Her work she does is amazing. And I'm really glad that you joined us, and maybe we'll do a part 2 at some point. But in terms of wrapping up, what do you feel, Nikki, you would like to share or say to sort of complete this? I know it was a marathon, and it's our first time doing these modules. So in retrospect, they probably should be set for an hour and a half. We live and learn, right? So if we do them again, we'll definitely provide a little more time, and maybe we have you come in and do a full-on workshop.
Yeah. Oh, I'd absolutely love to travel and do a workshop with you. Hopefully they'll allow us to do that sometime.
But we can even do it via Zoom, you know, at a later time. We could,
can.
Shannon is saying she loves an idea of part 2. So we could talk about that. You and I could talk about that, because I can tell you we had 6 in this series. We had 6 of them in this series, and we've canceled the last one. So you and I should talk, because if you wanted to actually take the spot for the next part 2, we could potentially just continue this conversation then, and maybe even get from Shannon, since she was here, some pictures from her yard. And we could just pick it up, you know, where we've left off, if you're available and you would like to do that. Because there's definitely some interest here. So
good. And I will say, you know, that people who are listening, people who watch it later, you know, if you have specific things that you would like to know about, more like, okay, how do I do a certified wildlife habitat, or how do I, you know, what plants would I use for play? Can we workshop Western plants for play in the Southwest? I'm totally excited about that. Everything I do for nature play, I can do another 4 hours in each one of those. So there's lots of fun to do for sure. And I do want to recognize that Shannon's lovely child is showing me this beautiful picture. So thank you very much. I see the red and I see the yellow and I see your letters. Wow. Hold on to that, Mom, because yeah, my daughter became, she's fastly becoming a well-known artist. I think she's becoming well-known. Of course, I'm Mom, so I got to tutor her forward, but it's been wonderful watching her progression of art over the years. But I'll leave you with this one story, is that, and we'll be done. It is, like Sally was saying, so extremely important to bring our kids in that design process. And when we shut up and allow them to talk about it, I'm amazed at how much they came up with. And we did a design charrette in Florida for the Pine Jog Nature Center, and all the adults were taken away and they did their own design charrette. That was obviously the most important one. And then I was with the kids and I did a design charrette with them, and they came up with these very interesting rainbow arches. And I thought, oh, they want a tunnel. And I kept asking them, don't you want a tunnel? No, tunnels are scary. We just want arches. Okay, so I definitely learned something from them. And then in Arizona at the Prescott Early Childhood and Nature and Place-Based Summer Institute, we went and toured a backyard childcare center, and she had those rainbow arches, and she said that the children had told her to put them in. And so, you know, children are going to be thinking of kind of a lot of the same things. And again, when we are able to take ourselves out of that space and let the kids really design their play, it's amazing what they came up with. And they'll, you know, yes, they'll probably use it and then grow right out of it, but it's something that they need, that they're asking for. So hopefully we've inspired you. Like I said, if there's things specifically you'd like to hear about the next time we're in, I can delve into one thing or another, and go out there and enjoy, enjoy nature and plant at your spaces. Like I said, it's the way we're going to save the world, whether it's your child growing up to be an adult making laws, that butterfly that needs that backyard habitat, and just our own peace of mind and sanity and health. So thank you so much again for having me. And yeah, we'll give you some of these resources so that you can check out some more stuff.
Yeah, so what I just did is I just put into the chat my 2 emails. So I would like to ask Shannon, Misty, Lindy, and Catherine, if you're still listening here, if you are interested in a part 2, it's sounding like I'm getting a yes from Nikki, so yay. I will scramble really quick to figure out when we can make that happen. It might be really soon, like the next week, 2 or 3, depending on Nikki's availability. So email me, and this is what I would like to request. I know Shannon a little bit, and I definitely know Misty, and I know her boys. If the 2 of you for sure, and the other people that are listening, you're more than welcome, but the 2 of you for sure can sit down with your littles and actually ask them, maybe even draw a picture of what they would envision as a dreamy sort of something to add to your backyard. Maybe do that and send a picture of that and a little blib about, that process to me via email. And think about, given what Nikki was able to provide today, in your own spaces, where, what would be a next step for you? Do you want some specifics about what plants to plant? Do you want some specifics about where to find resources? Do you have a particular vision in your mind that you would, after consulting with your little ones, your nature niños, you would like to put into action? Pop all of that into an email for me in the next few days, and I will make sure Nikki gets it. And what we will do is, I know because we've canceled that last module, we can create a part 2, and it would be really, really wonderful to impact a few families and get this, get this thing going. So pop that into an email to me as soon as you can, and I'll make sure to share it with Nikki, and she and I will talk. And we will figure out where to pick up from where we're leaving off today, and come back and go a little bit deeper. It will be totally awesome. So let's do that. Let's do that. And I think for now, I'm just going to say thank you, Nikki, again. And yeah, let's keep on designing on the dime, and let's get the kids out into the backyard, and, let's get this rewilding revolution going, baby. Let's do it. So thanks everyone for your time. I know this Zoom world can get a little fatiguing, but it feels like we really kind of got into the juiciness towards the end. So part 2, what will be nice is we can just sort of say to folks who are joining on, make sure you've seen part 1. And we're just taking it from where we left off, and we'll see you soon. We'll design a part 2 really soon. Okay. Thanks everybody. Have a great Sunday. I'll look forward to your emails. And
Thanks
we'll get something. We'll get something. Yes. Hi, Weston.
Thanks for supplying your backyard, Misty.
Hi, Weston.
I really appreciate it. I feel very, very fortunate we got to do that. So
awesome. Well, we're going to dig into it more, Misty. It sounds like everybody wants it. So let's do it. Send me your information ASAP while it's fresh, and we'll get it planned.
Okay.
All right, everybody.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye, Weston.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, Nikki. We'll be in touch.
Sounds
that was
good.
awesome. So if you're good for part 2, let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And we canceled the last one because you were telling me intention originally with this was that there would be a consistent cohort of parents. And we were hoping to build some kind of like momentum or community. And we were going to do some story sharing at the end, and it didn't work out that way. All of the Zoom stuff is like, it's a crapshoot. It's, testing stuff out, but this is really exciting if you're willing to come back. And I'm thinking what will make sense is to actually move the next module to the very end. So the next one was not this coming Sunday. It was the Sunday after that, which I don't have a calendar in front of me, but next Sunday is the 5th. So I think it was July 12th. I don't know if that works for you, if we could come back July 12th. And I'll just bump the final one to the very end, because people were really super interested. And, I'm sorry for the eating half the time, but again, this was like, it was experiment, and we have gone over each module. Yeah. We've gone over time, but we went by 15 minutes, and I feel like today we could have done 2 hours because people were into it. So let's just do a part 2.
Yeah,
Do
we
it.
will.
Awesome.
We will. And there's so much to say, and there's so much to encapsulate. And I am appreciative of the stuff that you put in the front because it does frame everything that we're going to do.
Right.
And if people can keep those, the play idea in mind and the nature idea in mind, then they're there. And
Exactly.
then it's just they need to get their brains out of the way. And I'm a very organized and kind of type A person, but I get outside and I'm like, or I get around kids and it's like, just go. So that's my playtime for sure. So
right. No,
yeah,
and I
hopefully
just
I'll have
know
a
from
better-
looking at
better
your work
background
before
so-
too, that it's so helpful when you can actually look at someone's yard and really, really
Oh, yeah.
specifically come up with suggestions for them. So I know Shannon will come back with some information
Good.
and maybe some of these other parents too. And, let's, let's
Yeah, I
see
had a
if we
few
can get
pictures
them
of
on
my
their
yard,
way.
some before and afters that I wanted to show, but we didn't have time
Yes.
for it. And I wanted
Yeah, and if you want to
be more
just send
about
me
them,
those
but-
pictures, I do. What might be helpful for the second time around is if you send me all of your pictures, I will just pop them into the slide format, and then I
Mhm.
could be operating that for you, and you don't have to go back.
Okay.
You don't have to go back and forth and deal with trying to get it up on your screen. You could just talk.
Sure.
So maybe maybe just send me a picture dump. Just email me a link to wherever you keep it, whether it's OneDrive or whatever it is, and tell me what you want, and I'll just pop them all into slides, and I could just go through them for you. And then once I've seen them, you could say to me, "Hey, Sally, can you go back to that one with the little cozy, I don't know, tree cookie, circle area or whatever," and I could just flip through them and totally handle all of that, and you can just talk the whole time and not have to worry about that. So yay, I'm excited there's going to be a part 2, and I'm really curious to see if we'll actually get that prompt that I put out there, if we can get some child drawings and pull the kid part in. I think that will be really fun to be able to kind of report on and share back out again.
Yeah, it was really interesting to do a design charrette with small children because I brought in pictures of playgrounds, I brought in pictures of nature, and they were not. I was worried that they would use that too much as modeling. Oh yeah, I want the swirly slide. I want the, and I didn't. I wanted them to think outside of that box, and I was pretty amazed that they instantly kind of took those pictures and just shoved them away. And then we had
Just wanted simple.
Clay so it was amazing what they were able to do. But again, it lasted for about a half hour and then they were gone. And the older kids started to come in and get interested in trying to pull the younger kids in. And so it helps also knowing, how kids play at different stages for sure, because what a teenager wants is quite different than what the 5-year-old wants.
Yes.
But your
Well,
yard
what my
can
major
just
takeaway
progress
from you,
along
my
that.
major takeaway from listening to you today was, it's common sense, but I hadn't really thought about it before that, if you're wanting to put the time and the effort into your space and you're also child friendly, then yeah, just go with Wild Abandon, because you can just completely do a whole other thing to your yard 10 years down the line. We have this concept that, if you're renovating or you're working on your space, that it's going to be that way for a long period of time. And it doesn't have to be at all. It can be totally fluid and open. And so that was a good aha, moment for me. So yeah, I will make sure I forward you their emails ASAP, and then you and I will touch base, get me some pictures, and I'm going to aim for that July 12th. And we'll just put some word out there that I did have 2 parents specifically who had something else going on today. And I know one of them who was like, this is going to be available afterwards, right? Because I'm really, really interested.
Well,
and
that's the nice part about it, for sure. Yeah.
We've got good hits so far of people watching afterwards. And I will also play it up a little bit more and maybe post the Rusty Keeler, the little YouTube video. I'll do stuff like that to kind of get people thinking. So I think part 2 will be even juicier. It'll be good. So thank you. Yay.
Well, thank you for having me. I enjoyed it. Love talking about this stuff. Hard to turn me off once I get started.
I know. Well, all of us, right? We're passionate about it. So, and we'll allow
exactly.
We'll from the top talk about it a little bit more time. But on the other hand, if it's a part 2, I won't I won't go into the, I have to do that beginning part. I got to do the pitch for the collaboration, and,
That's fine.
you
That's
know,
fine.
and we'll want to introduce you and me really, really quickly, but I can delete the other, you know, the play slides, and we'll just get right into the conversation. And those who, Misty and Shannon and these other folks who I don't know, if they're on that part 2, we can just go directly, you know, sort of go directly to them and just start having dialogue. So thank you. Have a good rest of the
Sure.
day.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
We'll
you too.
talk soon.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds
Awesome.
good. Thanks.
Ciao
Bye-bye.
for now. Bye. Bye, Catherine, if you're still listening. Bye-bye.